Hi, my name is Ogashi Martins, and in this video, we're looking at how to create class in Python. Because Python is an object-oriented program, so it makes it possible for us to create class in Python. So creating class in Python makes us to use the same code for different instances, and we'll be discussing a lot about a class, an object, attributes, and methods. So that will form our discussion in this video. So without wasting time, I'll just switch to my VS Code. So the first thing when you want to create a class in Python is to use the keyword class alongside the class name. So a class is an ecosystem, really, because there's a whole lot that happens in a class. So I will say a class is just like an ecosystem. Now, so what's happening in it is this: you have a class using the keyword class, and the name of this class here is tech and colon. So with this, I've created this class with this name tech. Now, anytime you're creating a class, be sure to note that the first alphabet in the name of that class is in capital letter. That's very important. Unlike functions whereby you use a small letter to serve as the first letter or first character in a function name, for class it has to start with a capital letter. So for instance, if you create a class and you do not know what you want the class to be doing at that time, you can use the keyword pass in the body of that class so that the class would be executed without any error. Because once you create a class, then you need to define the method that will be working in that class. Now, method in a class are just functions that you define within a class. So any function within a class is called a method. So that is one thing about class. A class will have a method. So you create a class using the command class alongside the name of the class. And the name of the class would always start with a capital letter. Like in this case, I've done here with tech. You can see that T is in capital. Now, in the body of your class is the method. And methods are nothing but functions that you have defined within your class. So now the next thing about class is what we call object. Now objects are the objects are the entities that would be using the method in your class. So objects are nothing but entities that will be using the entities in your class. In this case, I've created three objects. Sorry, I created just one object here, which I say student1. So this is an object. Why is it an object of this class tech? It's an object of this class tech because I said student1 equals tech in parentheses. So this right side of the equality sign here, alongside this student1, is saying that student1 is an object of this tech class. So that is what this line is telling Python, that okay, this class tech has an object and the object name is student1 because I said student1 equals tech parentheses. Now for every object we would have what we call the attributes. So for instance, if you look at a human being has several attributes. For instance, a human being has weight, a human being has height, a human being can talk, a human being can walk, can run. Those are attributes of a human being. A human being will have a name. Those are attributes of a human being. So every object of a class will have attributes. So how do you now specify attributes of an object? Now there are two ways. I will show you the first method and the appropriate method. Now this is the first method. Student1.name equals Jane. Now student1.name. Now I'm saying this name, this dot name says name is an attribute of student1. So which means student1 has a name, and the name of student1 is Jane. Also, student1.mark equals 50. That means the mark of student1 is 50. So if I run this, so what happened is that this class tech has been created. However, there are no methods there. That's why pass is in the body of that class. However, I have an object of that class, which is student1. By this line, I'm saying that student1 is an object of class tech, because I said student1 equals tech parentheses. So the attribute of student1 are specified two attributes of student1. Number one, I said student1.name equals Jane, and student1.mark equals 50. So student1 has two attributes, which is name and mark. So if I say print student1.name, print student1.mark, it will print for me Jane and 50, because I've said student1.name is this and student1.mark is 50. So how do we now add method to a class? Now we add method to a class by creating function in that class. I already said in the previous video that functions defined within a class are called method. So once we have a class, this class tech, now anything you have within the class, in the body of that class, is called a method. Methods are functions that I have defined in that class. So in this case, I'm defining the method def check underscore pass underscore fail, and I'm saying here self. Now this is very important. The argument this function is taking is self. Now you can put anything there. You can put A there, you can put B, you can put C, whatever you want to put there. However, the best practice for arguments within a class is to use the generic name self. So def check underscore pass underscore fail in parentheses, because this function is taking an argument. So the argument is taking is self. So self now represents the attributes of the object that is calling that class at that instance. So I'm saying if self dot mark is greater than or equal to 50, then return true, else return false. Now let me explain this part. Now we said def check underscore pass underscore fail in parentheses self. Now this self now takes in the identity of the object that is using the class at the time this method in this class would be called. So that is why in place of saying student1.mark, it is now self.mark greater than or equal to 50. So if I have 10 objects, I mean if I have student1, student2, student3, student4, so at every time this method is called, this self will take the identity of the object that is calling this method at that instance. So self will take the place of student1 at the instance of student1. Self will take the identity of student2 at the instance of student2. Self will take the instance of student10 at the time student10 is accessing the method in this class. And the body of my method here is if self.mark is greater than or equal to 50, return true, else return false. So I can use true and false alongside return without making them an identifier, because true and false are keywords. If I've used any other thing to say correct or fail, it will not take it, because correct is not a keyword in Python. That's, so I can use true because true is a keyword, and I can use false because false is equally a keyword. So if I run this now, so this function tech has been created with this method of check pass fail. So here I'm saying student 1 is an object of class tech, and the attribute of student 1 is student 1.name is Jane, student 1.mark is 50, and also there's another object which is student 2. By this I'm saying student 2 is an object of class tech. So, and the mark attribute of student 2 is student 2.mark is 40. So when I run this, Python now knows that okay, student 1 and student 2 are objects of the class tech, and the attribute of mark of student 1 is 50, attribute of mark of student 2 is 40. So now student 1 wants to access this method in class tech. Recall that we created this class, the name is tech, we define this method here. This is the method that we have defined in it, this def check underscore pass underscore fail, and the argument here is self. Self is taking the identity of the object that is calling this method at that instance. So here now that I'm saying student 1 dot check underscore pass underscore fail and parentheses, I'm saying that if student 1 dot mark is greater than or equal to 50, return true, else return false. So self now takes the identity of student 1. So it's now become if student 1 dot mark, which is this, student 1 dot mark is 50. So that is what would happen there. So when I run this, you can see that I return true because student 1 dot mark is 50 and 50 is equal to 50 here, because I said if student 1 dot mark is greater than or equal to 50 and student 1 has 50, so that will return true. However, if I do that for student 2, it will return false because student 2 dot mark is 40. So we see student 2 dot check underscore pass underscore fail empty parentheses is false because student 2 dot mark has 40, and in the method I said greater than or equal to 50 is true, and else if this is false, then the body of the else will be executed, which would be to return false. So let's move on. Now, the best way to assign attributes to objects in a class created in Python is to use the init method. Now, the init method is a default method by which the attributes of an object is called automatically whenever the object is created for that class. So once you use the init method, the attribute of the object of that class will automatically get called whenever the object is created for that class. So the same class that I've used before, class tech, the same method here, check underscore pass underscore fail. Self, if self dot mark is greater than or equal to 50, return true, else return false. Now here is the init method. So df double underscore init double underscore, then in parentheses. Now the attribute of the object that will use this class tech is name and mark. So I'll be saying self comma name comma mark. So, and the body of the init method is self.name equals name, self.mark equals mark. So if I have 10 attributes, I will say self.attribute1 equals attribute 1, self.attribute2 equals attribute 2, self.attribute10 equals attribute 10. So with this now, anytime I create an object for this class tech, this init method will automatically call the attribute of that object with the class whenever the class is with the object whenever the object is created. So I've run that class has been created. So to use student 1 now as an object of class tech, if you recall previously, the parenthesis was always left blank before we use the init method. If we go back up, you can see here that when student 1 was created, alongside the class tech, we left the parenthesis here empty This was the case because the init method was not part of the class tech at this time. However, when you create the init method alongside the class, once you are creating an object for that class, you put the attribute of that object inside the parentheses of the class. So what happens here is that Femi now goes for name to student 1, and 60 goes for mark to student 1, because the init method here will automatically recognize the first position argument here as name and the second position argument as mark for student 1 as an object of class tech. So when I run this, so now I'm saying print student1.name and print student1.mark, you see that Femi and 60 will be printed automatically. So we see Femi and 60 has been printed because once I'm creating this object alongside this class here, because I've created init method within this class tech, when I created class tech, I'll just put the attribute of this student 1 in the parentheses, and the init method automatically assigns the attribute to student 1, just like we have seen. Now if I create another student, student 2 tech, this is the attribute of student 2. Once I run this and say print student2.name, student2.mark, you can see that the name and mark has been printed. So this is the appropriate way of assigning attributes to objects in a class in Python by using the init method. It's very important you always use the init method alongside your class in Python so that your attribute can be automatically called alongside your object once that object is created for that class. So let's move further. Here again, I'm creating another object or class tech, and I'm saying the name is Kunle and the mark is 80. So when I run this, it will print student3.name, print student3.mark as Kunle and 80 respectively. So student 1 is accessing the method check pass fail in class tech, saying student1.check underscore pass underscore fail parenthesis. That would now do the method for student 1, and student 1 has 60 is greater than 50, that will return true. For Kemi is 40, it will return false, and for Kunle is 80, it will return true. So when you run this, you can see it's true. For student 2, it will return false, and for student 3, it will return true because student 3 has a score of 80. Alright, so student underscore pass equals student3.check pass fail. I'm just trying to add some print to my output. So print student3 underscore name, and your category is student underscore pass. So what I'm doing here is that the function call here, this method call here, will return either true or false, because that's what I have here, to return either true or false depending on the score of the student. So once that is returned, that will be returned and stored in this student underscore pass. So I'm using this print line here to say student3 dot name, which is the name of student 3, will be printed here. Your category is whatever is stored in this student underscore pass, which is as a result of this method check pass fail for student 3, would be printed here. So let me run this. So you see the name of student 3 is Kunle. Your category is true, just like what we have here. Student 3 dot check underscore pass underscore fail is true. So just to add some flair to my output. So in this case, I'm creating a class that evaluates the surface area and volume of a cylinder. So from mathematics, we know what the surface area of a cylinder is and what the volume of a cylinder is. So you can just check that up in Google to know what that is, but I've done that already here. So I'm creating the class cylinder, that's the class name, and I'll be having two methods there, one method for the surface area and one method for the volume of the cylinder. So I'll use the init method to take in my attribute of a cylinder. Now the attribute of a cylinder is the radius and the height. that will be the attributes I will be using to evaluate the surface area and the volume. So def double underscore init double underscore in parentheses self comma radius comma height colon in the body of the init method, self.radius equals radius, self.height equals height. So the first method is the surface area method. So def surf underscore area underscore cylinder self. So surf underscore area equals 2 pi r h plus 2 pi r squared. That is the surface area of a cylinder. So this is 2 times mp dot pi times self dot radius times self dot height plus 2 times mp dot pi times self dot radius double asterisk 2, which means radius square. And this method here will return surf underscore area. The first method will return surf underscore area, which will be the surface area of the cylinder. And the second method is for the volume of the cylinder, which is pi r squared h. That is the volume of a cylinder. So here I'm saying def vol underscore cylinder self. So vol underscore cylinder mp dot pi times self dot radius double asterisk 2 times self dot height. This is the pi r squared h part of it, and this function will return the vol underscore cell. So when I run this, the function has been created. So the class has been created for cylinder. So cylinder 1 is an object of the class cylinder, and I'm putting in the attribute inside the parentheses because I have the init method already in class cylinder. So 2 and 12 are the attributes of cylinder 1, which will go in for radius and height. So 2 is the radius of cylinder 1 and 12 is the height of cylinder 1. So cylinder 1 now needs to access the method you have in class cylinder, and you have two methods there, one for surface area, one for volume. So surf underscore area underscore cell equals cylinder 1 dot surf underscore area underscore cylinder. This is the first method for surface area, which is this. This is the method I'm calling against cylinder 1. So this method will return surface area, which is surf underscore area. It will return it, and the value will be stored in this identifier surf underscore area. And I'm using this print here to say print the cylinder surface area is, using this 2 decimal place to format the float dot format surf underscore area underscore cell. Now the value that is stored here, which is returned from this method, will be formatted here to 2 decimal place. And also volume underscore cell equals cylinder 1 dot volume underscore cylinder. This is the second method in that class cylinder. So, and I'm calling it against cylinder 1. So I'm using this print function also to do some formatting on the output to 4 decimal place for the volume underscore cylinder, which is the value that is stored in this volume underscore cylinder, which came from what was returned from this method in this instance here. So when I run this, so we can see the cylinder surface area is this, and the cylinder volume is this. So I can reduce this to 2 decimal place, and I can say come here again and put mm if that is the unit, and I can also come here and put mm when I run this. So we see it has been added. Also, I have another cylinder, cylinder 2, which is also an object of that class cylinder with attributes 4 and 22, which means the radius is 4 and the height is 22. Just the same thing we did earlier. So this is for cylinder 2. So here I'm trying to show something. If you look at it, you see that you can have several objects that would use the method in a class. So if I have like 20 objects, would I now be typing them object 1, object 2, object 3, object 4, object 5, object 6 up until object 20? So I want to show you a method by which, if you have several objects to access the method in a class, you can just use the for loop to loop over your objects and create the object, and also use the for loop to run all the method over all the objects, and you see your print in that manner. So here I want to create a class that evaluates the speed of a vehicle, and we know that the formula for speed is distance divided by time. So that is the attribute. Distance and time now becomes the attribute in this case. So I'm creating a class and I'm calling that class speed, and the first thing I'll be defining here is the init method. So df double underscore init double underscore self comma distance comma time. So, and self dot distance will be distance, self dot time equals time. So distance and time are the attributes for my objects in this case, which are the vehicles. So the method for the speed here is df speed self. So speed equals self dot distance divided by self dot time, because speed is distance over time. And I'm using the print function here to say print the speed is to 2 decimal place. 2 decimal place, format whatever is the outcome of the speed here, format it to 2 decimal place, and the unit is meters per second. That's what I've done here. Now I'm using the if else here to find out if the vehicle is slow or the vehicle is fast. So I said if speed, which is whatever is the outcome here, is less than or equal to 1, print slow vehicle. If this is false, then the body of the else will be executed, which is print fast vehicle. So this method will return speed. So speed will be returned in this method. So let me run this. So that will be created. Now in this case I have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. So I have 7 vehicles. So I have distance and time that is corresponding to 7 vehicles. So vehicle 1 has the distance of 40, cover the distance of 40 in 60 seconds. Vehicle 2 covers the distance of 60 in 55 seconds, while vehicle 7 cover the distance of 160 meters in 64 seconds. So in place of saying vehicle 1 equals speed in brackets 40, 60, vehicle 2, that will take a lot of time. So I'll just use the for loop to create all my objects, and also use the for loop to use the method in my class speed on all my objects. So V now is the identifier for my vehicle, and I'm creating an empty list here for V. So this first line is where I'm creating my objects. This first line is where I'm creating all my objects. So I said for I in range 0, 6 colon. So what's the body of my for loop? I said v dot append speed, because this is where I'm creating my object. And for any object, we know you say the object name, the object class, and the attribute of that object. So that's what I'm trying to do here. So v dot append speed in bracket of speed, distance I, comma time I in square bracket for I, square bracket for distance. So which implies for I a range of 0 to 6. Now the range function will make me iterate over this list of distance and the list of time. So range of 0 to 6, so that will be from 0 to 6 in a step of 1, because by default the step of range is 1. So I don't need to put the step after this and say comma 1, because by default the step of range is 1. So I don't need to put that again. So what will happen now is 40, 60 will be assigned to, will be appended first, 60, 55 will be appended second, and on and on and on like that till this range is exhausted for all of this instance in the distance and the time. So the objects will be created here. So here now I want the objects now to all access the method in the speed class. So what I did here in this second for loop is for I in range of 0,6 v index I. So for every index of v which was appended here, dot speed, because this speed here is the method here, dot speed. The first thing I did was to do the class, the object, and the second thing I'm doing is to use the object, to use the method in the class on all the objects. So v instance of indexes in v dot the method, which is speed. So once I run this, we can see that for all the vehicles 0 to 7, 40, 60, this is the outcome of 40, 60, and it's a slow vehicle because it's less than 1, because that is what the method is equally checking. If speed is less than or equal to 1, print slow vehicle. Else, so if this is false, that means the speed is greater than 1, then print fast vehicle. So we can see that is what has happened here. Fast vehicle for 1.09, slow vehicle for 0.89, fast vehicle for 1.44, 1.14, and fast vehicle for 2.67, and fast vehicle for 1.82. So that is how you can use the for loop to create several objects, and also to use the for loop to access the method for several objects within a class. So with that, we have come to the end of this video. Thank you very much.